The latest edition of Wine2Wine takes place in Verona on the 25th and 26th of November 2019. I am super honored to have been invited to appear on a panel discussing podcasts, audience growth, education, and social sustainability, which I hope to broadcast here at a later date. As part of my preparation for that talk, I put together a special deck that sets out all of the podcast equipment that I use to produce Interpreting Wine. To see that, and I hope get you started on your podcasting journey, just head to interpretingwine.com/kit. This series was recorded at this year's Wine2Wine in Verona and will feature interviews with the key organizers, as well as selected speakers, bringing the experience of this major digital event and allowing you to feel a part of proceedings no matter where in the world you are. Today's episode of the Wine2Wine series features Vinitaly International Managing Director Stevie Kim. As well as Vinitaly International, Stevie is also responsible for a number of initiatives promoting and championing Italian wine, including the Wine2Wine conference. We hear her origin story and transition into the wine world. She talks Vinitaly, both inside Italy and the outside markets. We talk media and Wine2Wine, before closing on the future of Italian wine media. Enjoy.
I've been doing Vinitaly, which is actually a wine fair. It's an annual wine fair. And I was recruited by the group. But Vinitaly is actually not a company. It's owned by exhibition company called Verona is where you are right now. And Vinitaly is just a brand. And they wanted to position it more to become international. So I got kind of recruited into doing this because Verona Fiere is owned by actually the city of Verona, principally. So it's a political animal. So I think when they thought of international, why not bringing in, I don't think at the time they were thinking of like a Korean American person, which I am. I was born in Korea and grew up in New York. And my original sin, the reason why I'm in Italy is because my original sin is Italian and he's Veronese. So that's the reason why I'm here. And so I kind of started this as not a hobby, but I said, let's think about internationalizing the brand. And then I kind of thought like, wow, this is kind of fun. You can actually drink and people pay you. So I said, this is great, and that's how kind of I got started because I was working with my husband at the time. He's a medical doctor. I mean, in Italy, dottore, everyone's a dottore, but the bona fide medical doctor, he is. And I was working with him, but I thought like to salvage my marriage, basically, because we were getting into a lot of discussions. I said, you know what, I'll just go out and do my own thing. And so it kind of started because as almost like a hobby. And I got terribly interested because I said, there's so much I can do for Italian wine. So I think in the beginning, they were thinking about creating complementary services or products that can support the brand Vinitaly. So I came in as a small project to start this thing called Opera Wine. That was kind of my baby, it's a walk-around tasting with Wine Spectator. So Wine Spectator, they do this thing called Wine Experience. I don't know if you're familiar. Yeah. And so Opera Wine is basically wine experience just with Italian wine producers. So I started with one major product other than doing event management around the world, like Vinitaly China, Vinitaly Russia, Vinitaly Miami or New York. And then I kind of streamlined into some of the activities of event management. And then also, it's like two parts. Things I do outside, internationally, whether it's in Hong Kong, whether it's in Russia, whether it's in New York. And then things I do during Vinitaly. And Vinitaly is in April. It runs for 4 days. But what I do kind of runs for 2 weeks because I start with this thing called Vinitaly International Academy, which is it's a school for 5 days. We've had 15th edition now, and it's a 5-day course. It's kind of intense, and we certify quote-unquote Italian wine ambassadors. Now the pass rate is only about 25% at first seat. About 650 people have gone through the course, and now we're up to 230 Italian wine ambassadors who are certified, and quite a few of them have gone through more seating of the exams. And the students are also Masters of Wine and Master of Somm, so the level is quite high. Because if you think about it, even the Institute, the MW program or the court program, it doesn't really have that deep dive into the Italian wine. So it's kind of like I felt like I saw that niche, and that's what we started doing. So that's one thing, 5 days. Then I do 3 days of wine competition. It's called 5-Star Wines. And there is actually a small part of the natural wines, which Monty, whom you'll meet, he leads that because he's the biodynamic, point person for us. And then we do 1 day of opera wine. And then it brings us to 4 days of Vinitaly. And during Vinitaly, we do a lot of course, the master classes, as well as we man the incoming program. So a lot of the buyers, when we're outside doing all these events, then we try to bring them back to Vinitaly. So it's kind of, I think of it as like, a return trip. Like we go to the different places in the world to do different events, different educational programs, different master classes, and then we try to bring them back at home at Vinitaly, but not just during Vinitaly, throughout the year for the Italian wine producers. I kind of see myself as the matchmaker, like a dating agency almost, between trying to bridge the gap between the Italian wine producers and the external markets.
Absolutely fascinating. I mean, I could ask you so many things just about Vinitaly, but given the time that I've got you for here, I want to also understand, I guess, a bit more around how does Vinitaly show up in those different markets. You've already mentioned several very interesting markets, Miami, Russia. How, given that kind of ecosystem really you've just described for Vinitaly, how do those different brands or different editions, if you like, of Vinitaly around the world, how do they A, exist as entities of themselves, and B, play into that ecosystem here back in Verona?
So I always think about what we do outside. So essentially outside of Verona, we have Vinitaly Hong Kong. We've been doing it for about, I think, 9-10 years now. Vinitaly Russia, and that's in Moscow and St. Petersburg. We've been doing that for 16 years in Moscow only. In America, on the other hand, there were lots of different Vinitaly tour, if you will, in different cities, but I'm kind of the bad cop. I nixed all of those because I feel like there was no value out of Vinitaly doing another walk around tasting, because there's so many, especially like in New York City. Each evening, each day, there is a tasting, whether it's from the consortiums, producers, or the portfolio tasting from the importers. There's something, or winemakers dinner, thousands of them. There is always something going on with Italian wine. So I said, this is where there's no value add of Vinitaly doing yet another walk around tasting. So that's when I started actually Vinitaly International Academy. So in stateside, we're mostly doing Vinitaly International Academy. So we go into different cities. We've been to mostly New York a couple of times, San Francisco, Los Angeles. And we're thinking of other cities now, like Detroit, for example. And we try to have that super deep dive connect with a few of the, the education bodies, but also, players and, trade people, professionals. So that's what we've been doing mostly for America. In China, I was going to China once a month for like 5 years. Very, very, very difficult for Italian wine. It's completely unknown still. And right now, as Verona Fiera, they are organizing a wine fair, let's say, so there's a new wine fair going on for 2020. So those are kind of the activities we do abroad, right? So either it's grand tasting, master classes, or Vinitaly International Academy. We also do another program called Native Grape Odyssey, and those are it's a European financed program, which is 3 countries, Russia, Canada, and Japan. And we do the below level, the mid-level, which is called the Maestro course. And that's going to happen it's a 3-year program. Next year, we'll be going into 5 different cities in Japan, Canada, and Russia. So, and that's more of a masterclass seminar series.
That's a whole year's worth of activities by the sounds of it, because you obviously have to be aware of different seasons and different vintages when you're going into different hemispheres and sort of taking this on the road, really, and going out to meet the markets. One of the things that I see from my position is that there's so many events in the wine world. I mean, in the drinks world, in the spirits world as well, but in the wine world, there are a lot of events, a lot of tastings, as you mentioned there, a lot of master classes. And I think this might be the segue back to Wine2Wine, where we're in the context in which we're talking now, is how do you foresee, or what is your kind of wish list, I guess, for the media that will come out of a program like that? Because presumably you are capped. The number of people who will turn up is X numbers of people. Whereas if there is media that comes out of those interactions and those masterclasses and those academies, then that can potentially be broadcast and impact a much broader audience. So, yeah, as I say, it may be more in the context of Wine2Wine, or it may be in the context of those, but I'm just curious to get your thoughts on that sort of premise that, yeah, media actually has an important role to amplify that message, amplify that experience to a set of audience who potentially can't be there in the room and can't be there on the day.
So with regards to media, that's interesting you mentioned that, because I have about 38 staff in my group, in my immediate work group. And I always tell them, each one of us, we have to consider ourselves as working for a media agency. Whether we're doing event management, whether we're doing executing a educational program. For me, we are basically a communication platform, hence a media agency. And this is important because whether my team is divided into, let's say, 3 major departments, if you can call that work groups, I like to call them better. So one is basically the graphics, and that includes photo, video. And the second group is the communication, PR, social media, that department. And then it's the other third is actually the back office, your traditional back office, event management, etc. But every single member of I do a stand-up. I know it's very cheesy, but I do a stand-up every morning at 9 a.m., even if there are 38 of us, whoever is there, to understand what we're doing so that all the communication is streamlined. I think this is very important. I keep on saying, I want everyone, whether it's a photographer, whether it's a graphic person, whether it's a social media, or whether it's even a back office person, I need for all of you to understand why, the big picture, first of all, so that we're all on the same page. Because if you understand the mission and the objective, then you can contextualize each person's role into what they're doing, whether it's just a matter of taking a photo or social media or even, communicating with the producer. So if we tag right into Wine2Wine, the reason why it was created is exactly that. because there are two typologies I saw because I don't come from wine exhibition background, nor wine, but I saw in the very beginning, there are two categories of like producers or exhibitors, if you will, during a wine fair. You've seen this, even in a grand tasting, right? There are producers who plan before they actually come to the event. They, they fix appointments, they reach out to journalists, etc., and they're completely proactive, and their participation is incredibly useful and fruitful. Whereas there are others that just come with their little desk with wines because what's inside the bottle is so great that they expect miracles to happen immediately. So Wine2Wine was created so that there's no wine tasting involved. There's no master classes. Today there's a tasting panel, but that's dedicated to the speakers, because I feel like we still want to give them a little flavor of Italian wine. But during 2 days of Wine2Wine, there are no wine tastings, like no wine seminars. And this is on purpose so that I positioned it like in terms of the calendar after the harvest, because I used to do similar things during Vinitaly. But people are so damn busy, and rightly so, they have to try to make a sale. They weren't attending any of the seminars. So we said, let's create a moment, okay, after the harvest, before the Christmas holidays. And this year, unfortunately, it's right at the, Thanksgiving week. And, you can never get that right date because it's always wrong for somebody. But so that they can dedicate the time, people come in a way so that they can prepare better for any of the promotional activities that they'll be doing, including Vinitaly, which is in April. So we're trying to give them some extra tools so they can better prepare for themselves, whether doing a wine maker center or participating in a wine exhibition or seeking out a new export manager. We try to give them that extra tool that they can go home with, so that then they can start applying these tools so that it can best help them prepare. And that's kind of the main objective. I know there are 70 sessions going on and there are lots of things going on, but what I do is, this is not very Italian, but I show everybody, even in a very crude, raw way, what we're doing. So every session is live streamed. And actually, anyone can look at it even afterwards. So I feel like that's very generous. But we want to give that opportunity to those participating, yes, because there are 4 parallel sessions. So they want to also follow the others. But also for anybody out there who wants to get if you are ready to invest your time, I'm ready to give you everything that we have, and that's kind of like what I'm trying to do in terms of communication and media, because I feel like that is the patrimony of exactly what we're trying to do, get that critical mass of information flow, and more the better in a way. So that this period, which is end of October, kind of towards the end of the year, it's kind of like food for thought for a lot of the participants. And it's for me, it's incredibly rewarding also because I get to meet people like you. And we are trying to encourage, also the next generation of the Italian wine producers, kind of have them, force them to speak English, get them out of their comfort zone and mix with also, exchange information with speakers from all over the world. So it's about creating opportunity. And we do that not just during 2 days of execution of the event, but before, but more importantly, also afterwards. And that's all about having a media platform. And that's what I feel like that is the future of Italian wine promotion and communication and education, because Italian wine is complex, right? It's like the Italian wine people. Like, they're incredibly creative, incredibly individualistic, but complicated. But I like to call that the chaotic charm. you know, and we try to do that messaging so that it can be useful for all the participants, especially for, you know, I have a soft heart for the Italian wine producers. I'm trying to kind of push the envelope so that they can think out of the box and, you know, get out of their comfort zone. And, you know, this is the 6th edition, and we're making small progress, so I'm quite happy with that. I feel like we are the aggregator. You know, I love the idea of aggregating, people, ideas, wines, and I think this is a really good place to start. You know, and I know there are a lot of friendships right now because of Wine2Wine. We have, of course, some some people come back year after year, and I think it's a good place to be, and hope you can come back, you know, again and again. It's all out there. People have to invest in, you know, do a little bit of homework, you know, and if they're curious about Wine2Wine, it's going to be a live stream on Facebook, so they can go and have a look if they're curious.
Thank you so much, Stevie. An absolutely amazing way to kick off this series. As I mentioned, you were really preaching to the converted in me, but I think your message about producers getting out there and telling their story is really important and super relevant in 2019. Do see below for all of the social media handles that Stevie has. I've also included the website and social media handles for both Vinitaly International and Wine2Wine. As Stevie mentioned, the Facebook page for Wine2Wine is the place to follow along with the conference. And of course, if you get the chance to watch me live on the podcast panel, which takes place on Monday, 25th of November at 5 p.m. Verona time. As part of my preparation for that talk, I put together a special deck that sets out all of the podcast equipment that I use to produce Interpreting Wine. To see that, and I hope get you started on your podcasting journey, just head to interpretingwine.com/kit. Next time in the Wine2Wine series, in episode 343, I sit down with Maureen Downey of Shea Consulting. See you then.